Hey guys, welcome to the lecture series on ethical hacking. In this video, we'll be mainly talking about the session hijacking and more of the DoS attacks. Although these are the topics in the fourth unit of our syllabus. So first 3 units, we'll be mainly talking about what is a basic ethical hacker, what is a process that will be involved. Next, different type of enumeration techniques like Linux enumeration. Next, Windows enumeration, how we are going to gather the data, collect the data, make the analysis. Okay, next in the third unit, we'll be mainly talking about the Trojans, what are the different type of countermeasures that has to be implemented, what is the sniffing technique, what is the active sniffing, passive sniffing. Okay, what are the different type of detection countermeasures has to be implemented, everything. Now in this video, and the next further videos concerned to the fourth unit, we'll be mainly talking about the session hijacking. I had given some sort of example about the session hijacking in the previous video of the third unit also. So here the entire unit will be mainly talking about the session hijacking. Okay, what is the TCP hijacking, session hijacking, different type of things. What is a session? How the intruder will be hijacking the session. Okay, and next to these things, we'll be talking about the DoS attacks. DoS is nothing but the denial of service attack. Apart with the DoS, we'll be talking about the distributed denial of service attack in the case of distributed environment and all these things. First of all, let me go in detail about the fourth unit. So in this unit, as I said about, we'll be having two parts, session hijacking and moreover the DoS. First of all, go with the session hijacking. How the session will be hijacked. What is a session exactly? Any user want to make any sort of data transmission. Before the data transmission, first of all, he has to establish the connection. Whether we are going with the connection oriented or also connectionless services. A connection has to be established. If I'm going with the connection oriented, let me go with the TCP protocol. In the case of connectionless services, we will be going with the UDP protocols. Before to these things, we have to establish the session. A session is nothing but the time duration where sender and receiver will be having the privileges to make the required data transmission. This is nothing but the session. So session hijacking. So here the intruder will be hijack the session and control over the total communication that has been done between the source and more of the receiver. He may behave like a man in the middle also. Okay, in detail we will be discussing about these session hijacking techniques. Okay, though the attacker takes control over the entire valid session, it will be unknown to both the parties who has been communicating with each other. It will be intercepting the communication. The attacker may manipulate the data. He may impersonate the communication. He may stop. He may do any sort of operation once he has gained the control over the session. Here you can see the user, he will be initiating the required communication. A session will be established for them to make the required data communication. So he first of all, he will be requesting the server. Server will be providing the required permission to have the required communication. So he will be creating a session. The attacker, he will be capturing that active session without information for the legitimate both sender and moreover receiver. And he uses that session to intercept, to manipulate, to personate. Any sort of things can be carried out by the attacker. And the receiver or also server will be thinking that the communication has been done from the valid sender. But here, this will be acting as a man in the middle attack. There's a maximum chance of having these particular things. How we are going to prevent? We have to go with the proper encrypted channels by using different type of secure protocols. We have to properly maintain the sessions. If any event situation has been there, if anything has been triggered, immediately stop the session. Once again, reinitiate the required sessions. Regularly maintain the session timeouts. Okay, the sender will be interested to transmit only 20 minutes of data communication has been done. Beyond that, there is no need to maintain the same session in the active situation. If it is still active, the intruder can hijack the session. So clearly maintain the time duration. Always go with the proper security policies. And finally, we have to properly maintain the or else monitoring the suspicious activities in my network. We'll be mainly talking about the transport layer hijacking. Okay, at the transport layer level, how the attacker will be hijacking the required things session. And what is the purpose of going with the sequence number? How the attacker will be predicting these sequence number to make the required unauthorized communication. Or else the attacker will be behaving as if he is a genuine receiver to the sender and genuine sender as to the receiver, and stopping one of the source or else a destination who are legitimate to make them as offline. And there is a chance of having going for the taking control over the entire session, how the required application layer level will be hijacking will be carried out apart with the transport level hijacking, and how the session hijacking will be carried out. Okay, how we are going to predict the session token IDs. There comes to the man in the middle attack, what I said right now. Okay, not only the man in the middle attack, there is a chance of having the man in the browser attack also, which is a new thing for you. I'll be discussing in detail about that thing. And the client-side attacks, session hijacking, different type of tools that will be generally used. And finally, what are the different type of counter mechanisms that will be maintained or preventing mechanism techniques that will be carried out by the ethical hacker. So this part with the session hijacking, and next in the second part of the syllabus, we'll be mainly talking about the denial of service or also DoS attacks. So the attacker will be pumping multiple requests to the genuine or else a legitimate server and making server busy, so that at that instant after, if any legitimate source is sending some sort of request to be processed to the server end, as the server is already busy in serving the request that has been pumped by the attacker, at that time the legitimate sender's request will not be processed. The service will not be provided by the server to the client, to the legitimate client. So that may lead to the DoS attacks. Okay, we'll be discussing about the DoS. We'll be talking about the different type of DoS attacks, even distributed denial of service attack and all these things. First of all, let me go with the in detail discussion about this session hijacking. So in this lecture video, we'll be mainly talking about the transport layer hijacking, then followed with the application layer, session layer, and different type of things. First, let me go with the transport layer hijacking. So which will be carried out at the transport layer level. Okay, it will be mainly targeting about the TCP protocol, where the communication will be carried out by using the connection-oriented services between the source and more of the destination. So they will be exploiting the TCP session mechanism. The attacker will be taking advantage of entire TCP session. Okay, generally in the case of connection-oriented, let me go in with what exactly TCP. You may not be familiar. Let me have a small glance about the TCP, how the TCP will work. The TCP is a connection-oriented services protocol, okay, which will be used at the transport layer level. So in the case of connection oriented, don't think connection oriented means it may be a wired network, connectionless means it may be a wireless network. It is wrong thing. Both the connection oriented and connectionless services are available in the wired networks and also in the wireless networks. The connection oriented service is nothing but prior to the data transmission. As I said, the connection has to be established. Once the connection is established between the source and moreover the receiver, the entire data has to be transmitted in that particular transmission link, which will be also called as a virtual circuit. Once a virtual circuit has been established, entire data communication between the source and moreover receiver will be done via that particular path. At every instant after, I will not go on switching the required networks in the case of connection oriented. But in the case of connectionless services, circuit switching will be happening in such a manner that depending upon the availability of the transmission line, and go on shifting from one transmission line to the other transmission line. So we are least bothered about the UDP session hijacking. First of all, we'll be talking about the transport layer level, TCP layer level hijacking. First of all, next to the session hijacking mechanism, okay, they are following the virtual circuit. As I said, every data will be transmitted via that particular transmission line. Only the first packet and more the last packet will be having the source address and all destination addresses. The intermediate packets, as they are going via the same path, there is no need to maintain the same source address and more destination address for every packet that I am transmitting, so that it will be avoiding the header for every individual packet so that more amount of data can be transmitted. But we'll be maintaining the virtual circuit number for every individual packet. To which particular path I have to route. The router should know. So these things will be maintained. So packet interception and hijacking will be happened once we are going with the TCP protocols. As the entire data will be transmitted via the same path, the attacker will be intercepting that legitimate path, and it will be intercepting the packets and inject some malicious packets into that particular virtual circuit, virtual path. And unknowingly, the receiver will be receiving the total stream of communication, thinking that the data is coming from the legitimate source. But here the attacker has induced his own malicious packets into the network. Session desynchronization will be carried out by sending forged packets, unauthorized packets, unwanted data, malware, any sort of things. The attacker can desynchronize the session, causing the confusion between the source and receiver in such a manner that, once a virtual circuit has been established and the data communication has been transmitted, the source and receiver will be bound to that particular connection, saying that at regular interval of time, what is a time period between every individual packet, what is the starting packet, how many number of packets I am going to transmit, okay, what is the time interval between each individual packet, what is the total data that has to be transmitted, what is the block size, block interval size, everything will be properly exchanged before establishing the connection between the source and the receiver. If the attacker has forged this particular information, it may lead to the confusion. A receiver will be thinking that I will be getting only 10 packets. Beyond that also, if I am getting other packets, the receiver will be in confusion state whether the data is coming from the legitimate source or not. Not only inducing more number of data, okay, more number of packets. He may modify the every time block size or also packet size also. Every time the source will be sending only 10 MB of data, the receiver will be thinking that the data will be of only 10 MB. As per that thing, it will be allocating its own buffer. As per that thing, it will be allocating the packet size, memory space, everything. Beyond that also, if it is patching different, if the attacker is patching, adding extra malicious software to that malicious lines of code to the existing data content, and it has been transmitted, the receiver will be in a simple confusion. Why there is a change in the packet size? So this is how the attacker will be behaving, and the session takeover and the deception. Okay, in some sort of situation, the entire session will be gain the supervisory control by the attacker, and abruptly they can stop the session, or else they may behave as if he's a trusted receiver for the sender and trusted sender for the receiver. The data that has been coming from source to the destination will be interpreted by the attacker. So these are the different type of situations where we will be seeing in the case of transport layer level hijacking, especially once we are going with the TCP protocols. Once I am going with the TCP, okay, especially in the transport layer level, at every instant of time, I will be using the same virtual circuit. So in spite of adding the source address and destination address for every individual packet, I will be adding only the virtual circuit number, so that the intermediate terminals can easily understand to which particular route the data has to be transmitted. And moreover, to maintain the same sequential order at the data, every packet will be uniquely represented with a unique packet number. The packet number will be always unique. If I am sending the X right now, the receiver will be expecting the next packet may be of Y. After Y, he will be expecting some sort of Z. He will be expecting next other packet. So a sequential number has to be maintained. So the attacker may change the sequence numbers also. To maintain the data in the sequential order itself, we are using the sequence number, the main role in the case of TCPs. So whenever we are having this particular weak and more predictable number generation, suppose if I am sending the X, I will be expecting the Y. If this particular prediction has been easily happened by the attacker, as he is hijacking the entire session, first X has sent the X packet. So X will be received by the intruder. And if the next sequential number, for example, if he is following a weak predictable number generation mechanism by the source, if he is sending the required Y, the intruder will be receiving the data. So what the intruder will be requesting, as it is of X, next is of Y, next he will be requesting for Z. So automatically clear prediction can be happened by the attacker, and the attacker can gain the control over the total network and can misuse the data what has been transmitted from the sender. The attacker, he himself will be behaving as if he is a trusted receiver. So always we have to avoid these guessing the next sequence number. We have to maintain a proper mechanism by generating the pseudorandom pseudorandom generations, which may not be predicted. Packet forgery and Morrow injection. Excuse me. Not only checking about these predicted sequence numbers, there is some sort of situations where the attacker can forge the packets also. What the communication that has been done between the source and Morrow receiver. The attacker will be in the network as an intermediate terminal. He will be hijacking the packet. He may forge the packet. He may update the data. He may do his own actions. So there is a chance of having these packet forgery can be happened. And as per the situation, he can delete some sort of data and he can include some sort of malware to maintain the same block size. So injecting also can be happened. So we have to go with the which may lead to the enabling the session hijacking and more of the spoofing. Okay, if successfully, if these things has been followed, the attacker can control over the entire session. It may inject the malicious unwanted data into the data that has been transmitted between the trusted parties. It may gain the trust from both and more on the receiver. Okay, which may lead to unauthorized access. We should be very much cautious about these sequence numbers. Always go with the pseudorandom generations for generating of the next sequence number, so that which cannot be predicted by the intruder. At some level, we can provide the required security. Take one of the parties, go with the offline. So as the name implies here, the source and Morrow receiver will be making the required communication. The attacker, what he will be doing, he will be stopping either source or else a receiver to go into offline. And unknowingly, the sender will be thinking the data has been transmitted to the receiver. And receiver will be thinking the data is coming from the source. But here, the man in the middle, that is nothing but the attacker, will transmit his own information. He intentionally rupture the connection or else disconnect the required communication between the source and Morrow the receiver. He will be using different type of disruption techniques. He can go with the TCP reset. Okay, reset packet may be there. Okay, we do in the TCP header, we do have the reset. Whenever the reset has been there in the packet that has been communicated between the source and receiver, automatically he will be re-establishing the entire communication. So once the connection has been re-established automatically, here the receiver is not a receiver, he is an attacker. Okay, always we have to go with these things in such a manner that the attacker may create a gap of communication between the source and Morrow the receiver. As one of the receiver has gone with the offline, definitely there will be a gap. So in personification of these disconnected parties, the attacker then assumes the identity of the disconnected user by continuing the entire system as if they are the valid users and with the valid parameters. What may be the sequence number? What is the next block of data that I am expecting? What is the block size? What is the block interval between each individual blocks? What is the total block of data I am expecting? Everything will be modified. So once this offline, another party has gone into the offline, automatically the session will be hijacked by the intruder. We should be very much cautious about these things. Once the session has been totally gained control by the attacker, so there is no boundary to the actions what he is going to do. Okay, he can stole the required sessions. Not only stealing, he can stole the data, he can misuse the data, he can leak that particular valid information. Okay, there is a chance of having the attacker acts as if they are the authorized users and they will be sending data to the legitimate users. And the legitimate users as a receiver will be thinking that the data is coming from the authorized person. The attacker may request for the login credentials also, even though he is not unauthorized. Okay, there is a chance of having execution of the unauthorized actions also, where the attacker will be requesting for the sensitive information. There's a chance to have the modification of the information. So these are the different type of things can be happen. So the attacker, what he will be doing to maintain the trustworthiness and to maintain as amount of data from the receiver, he will be go on extending the required session, which cannot be detected. Okay, it is very much hard to detect these type of attacks in the real world applications. Both source and mirror receiver will be thinking that the communication has been done between them in a trusted channel, through a trusted paths. But here the session hijacking has been happening and the intruder is gaining control over the entire network. So we should be very much cautious with these type of attacks. Thank you.
Like, share, comment, and subscribe VNR Digital Learning Resource YouTube channel.